You think Apple's behind in AI? Well, you're wrong.
Welcome to the All Future podcast, Matt. Wow, everyone's wrong here. That was a pretty good attention getter. I'm definitely, I don't know, my attention has been got. And welcome to the All Future podcast, where we talk all things Apple and tech and AI. And today we are talking about two of those in particular. If you are enjoying these videos, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for subscribing, and consider subscribing and continuing watching these videos. If you're enjoying them, we're going to continue making these throughout the week, even if we have to do it remotely like we're doing right now. But the good news is that Matt is an expert when it comes to remote filming. So he's been in this industry longer than all of us. So very good stuff coming over there. But yes, today we are talking about Apple and AI, and as it relates to Chat-GPT, because Apple is partnered with OpenAI to bring some Chat-GPT features to Apple Intelligence. We will see how that partnership develops over time. But there's various arguments about Apple being very behind in Apple Intelligence. And in some ways that, you can't really argue with that. They're still yet to deliver any of these features. The latest iPhones,
they have no product out yet. So just empirically, yes, they are behind, because I can use Google Gemini right now and I cannot use Apple at all. So.
Yeah, but once these features finally do arrive, we're going to have ChatGPT, and one could argue OpenAI is the forefront of all of these AI things. And we're seeing that these past couple of weeks, we've seen a lot more valuation of OpenAI, with companies looking to invest up to $100 billion of evaluation. Now it's up to $150 billion. And ChatGPT just released O1, their latest model, which adds some pretty interesting things. And it's kind of cool that essentially Apple might get some of this functionality in the future. But what all does this do for us, Matt?
So the headline is that it is a model designed for more complex tasks. So kind of science, reasoning, math, coding, that sort of thing. It quotes thinks about the problem longer. So however you want to interpret that, if an AI is really thinking or not, but it's slower, right? Like that's kind of the thing, but it's giving you smarter, better answers. And I'd be curious at what was like kind of the back end development on this. I can think about just the last 6 months in AI news, right? And all these dedicated AI devices, what did they get slammed with? Too slow, too slow, too slow. So I can see like kind of strategically OpenAI looking at this and being like, well, we actually can make a much smarter LLM in these things, but it's going to be slower. So we're going to have to make it a separate product and not our regular Chat-GPT. So I feel like that's what happened, right? They were developing this model and they're like, it's really great, it's slower. Let's call it something else. Let's say that it's for these particular tasks. Now, guys, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a coder, not a mathematician. So I haven't been able to really test this in any meaningful way, because I don't even know what I would do besides the test that they kind of tell you can do with it, which I don't think gives you very much. Yeah. But people who have tested this, there's actually these guys that do like IQ tests for LLMs. And it's the first one that's consistently, I'm looking at the graph right now, it's the first one that's consistently scoring above 100, which in IQ testing, 100 is an average person. So far, despite all the hype around AI, it has never really tested smarter than the reasoning of an average human. And for you guys who haven't taken an IQ test, it's not like a trivia test, or the SATs or something like that. It's really more about reasoning and your kind of the ability of your intelligence to solve problems and figure things out, not your kind of just rote memorization ability of your intelligence. Yeah. And looking at this graph here, there's kind of a cluster of LLMs sitting in kind of the 80 to 90th zone. And then this new O1 model is sitting at 120, which would mean that it is better than the average person at this sort of test. And which bodes really well for it. And so I'm excited about this, because I think the problem with a lot of AIs, I think, from the marketing of them, has been it's so easy to trip it up. in a lot of ways. We've talked about the strawberry problem a lot here, where if you ask it how many R's are in strawberry and it gives you the wrong info. So having an AI that kind of can't get tripped up as easily, can solve things that seem obvious to a human, right? Because there's so many mistakes that just regular consumer LLMs can make now that the human can just see like, hey, that's not right. Why'd you do that? And if you tell it, ChatGPT will go, oh, I'm so sorry. I was mistaken. And it gives you this kind of like fake apology that's given, even though it has no emotion. But with this, it looks like it's kind of getting over the hump. Literally, in the case of the IQ test, it's getting over that 100 mark. So I'm excited. I think this is a cool model. And it goes back to, is this actually going to be available just on iPhones, right? Like when I bounce a thing out to GPT, am I going to be able to pick what model I use of GPT? And can I feed it to the smarter model when I need to?
Yeah, knowing Apple, I wouldn't be surprised if you can bounce it to GPT and then it's going to choose for you what it needs to be. And then there might frustratingly be no way to choose. Like they're like, oh no, it's perfect. It does it all for you. You don't have to worry at all. And then it ends up with an answer that is less than it should be or didn't reason as well as it should be because it's actually using 4.0 when you wanted it to use 0.1. But at the same time, that kind of thing and that kind of advanced use case, especially within the next year or two, is going to be someone who's going to use the Chat-GPT app. And they're going to know the difference between these models. They're going to know how to work with these things. And then long term, this probably will all fuse to where Chat-GPT is just going to be kind of like an overarching amazing thing that can do intense reasoning or can do these other tasks. Just for now, it's all these different models because it's all in development. It's all being optimized for different things. And then we have tons of users using them in different ways. But this graph is extremely impressive. But I did find it interesting, like normal GPT-4 is actually on the low end of a lot of these LLMs. It's lower than Gemini. It's lower than Claude 3. But then, this 0.1 developer preview is all the way up to 120. So they were sitting on the lower end, and now they have this other model that's all the way over here. So hopefully that they can bridge the gap in the future, I guess is what I'm getting at, to where normal GPT that the average person is going to use is better at these reasonings, at least as far as it matters for the average answer.
And that's what's here's what's interesting about this is that, you're absolutely right. Like you see if according to this, they've got Llama 3.1 at like a higher reasoning ability. And I'm on record as being like, Llama's kind of garbage, man. But it's because of like this particular problem set, right? Like if you're going to say like, hey, I'm judging an AI based on human style reasoning of data, then okay, well, this is how it all lands, right? But maybe the GPT-4 is better at a whole nother thing, like recognizing what's the artistic style of a particular image, right? Like there's like you could do you go down the list of like different things that people are using these AIs for, and that's why I think Apple's method is going to work great, and that is Apple Intelligence is going to be fairly limited for things like this, and it's going to bounce you out to another model, and you can kind of pick the best model maybe, and by model I mean either it'll go out to Gemini or go out to an OpenAI thing, whatever they call it, or go out to Claude or whatever. And then you can kind of pick the best for your situation. Or ideally, Apple Intelligence knows what's best for your situation, like you're saying, and it bounces you out to the right one that's going to solve your problem that's in front of you.
And then I guess further ideally, Apple Intelligence will develop to the point where it can answer the majority of people's questions and do it well and without hallucinations. But it does seem unlikely considering how far ahead these companies are and how much we're seeing regularly from OpenAI. 4.0 is just, a month ago that it came out, maybe 2 months at this point. And it seems like every couple weeks we get a new announcement of a new model that's this much better, this much faster, and they can allow this many more tokens for users to be able to try it for free. Like even this one, it's 0.1, it's a preview, it's coming in Chat-GPT and API as a preview, but then they're also making 0.1 mini that is smaller, faster, and more cost efficient for coding. And just like there's so many different models coming out, and there's so many more opportunities compared to what Apple is developing. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But I think partnerships is going to be kind of the future of Apple Intelligence, like you're saying, and that it bouncing your answer out to the right service might actually be more of what its functionality is, especially at launch.
Absolutely.
But like you hinted at, you're not a mathematician, neither am I. So it's hard for the average person to quantify these things. And at the same time, looking at a graph is good, but also, it's an IQ test. Maybe this is learning how to take an IQ test very effectively. It's like the learning how to bypass the Kobayashi Maru. Did I say that right?
You did. I love a good Star Trek
course.
reference. So very cool.
Yeah, I knew the name and I know the reference. I just wanted to make sure my pronunciation was incredibly accurate when I have someone like Matt on the podcast. But
you nailed it, bud. You nailed it.
So it's like, is this bypassing the test? Is it figuring it out? Is it actually a really effective test because it's taking a test designed for humans? And then it's a question of like, we're not mathematicians. So who are the people that are testing these things? Who are the people that are actually making sure these things work really well? And it's hard for us to know. So we have to just kind of trust that these things are working on these really high levels. And it will be interesting to see what industries these end up in the future. Like, how does this O1 model revolutionize certain industries and make reasoning that much better for certain tasks? And something we're going to see develop across the board with AI from all these different companies. And then we're going to see companies having to engage with AI themselves to stay competitive. And we're actually seeing that this week with Salesforce in particular. So they're a cloud-based software company that provides customer relationship management solutions. And they have a ton of clients that you've heard of, like Coca-Cola, Amazon Web Services, Disney, Toyota, T-Mobile, Spotify. And they offer all these solutions, but their stock has been down a bit. And now they're introducing Agentforce, which is kind of their first endeavor into AI that could be a competitor to things like Chat-GPT and Google Gemini.
Yeah, so Salesforce, an incredibly well-known kind of thing if you're in like, I don't know, the corporate management world or something like that. I don't know, like some people out there probably never heard of it, and some people are like, oh yeah, Salesforce, of course. But it's we've talked about this a lot, that it kind of, the types of things that Salesforce does are the types of things that an AI can do really well if you get it trained right and it's set up for that kind of task. And, I guess according to this, Disney benchmarked it at twice the accuracy. So for whatever that's worth, it's working better. We're going to keep seeing this, right? Like if you're in this kind of industry, you're going to need to integrate an AI thing into your system, or you're going to get left behind by your competition. Even competition is never designed to compete with you, like OpenAI or Gemini, because these general purpose LLMs are so good. You can put a lot of hyper specific, instances into it and still get good data out of it, even though it's not something that's maybe particularly designed to do. So all these companies that run very specific types of software and services, Salesforce, anyone who's doing kind of HR personnel management, accounting, all these kinds of jobs that were data intensive, human intensive, skill intensive for that person that has to be able to operate it. AI can replace all those, and companies are 100% going to do that, man. I mean, that's just what's going to happen because it is cheaper. What this does, and we've talked about this a lot, is for the first time in human history, it is the white-collar style job that is going to feel pressure from a technology advancement, which normally technology has taken up the kind of more blue-collar. I know those are kind of umbrella terms that don't exactly fit things these days, but, the technology has replaced kind of on-the-ground physical workers in a lot of cases, right? But now this technology, with a thing like what Salesforce is talking about here, this is replacing more like people who work in front of a computer all day. Very traditional white collar style jobs. The AI can do it at a scale that's much larger than humans can do it faster, and more doing it way better. So this doesn't surprise me this is happening. And if I'm the guy running Salesforce, I'm probably seeing the writing on the wall. It's like, oh, if we don't embrace these tools for good or for bad, we just won't exist as a company anymore, because they're on the what's interesting is, on the kind of blue collar style side, you can make the argument for maybe artisanal work, right? Like I can go to IKEA and I can buy a rocking chair for $79, right? And it works like a rocking chair, or I can get the one made by this craftsman and it cost me $500, but I know it was handmade and this great thing, right? So like that's an example of the technology still leaving room for kind of the artisanal kind of guy. What does Salesforce do that is artisanal, right? Like, what is, like no one's going to go, oh, I need an artisanal accountant because I really want that personal touch to figure out my taxes, like no one thinks about that at all, right? Like, so like these kind of jobs are just going to get completely eaten up by AI. And this is just one more step in that rung and it's going to keep going.
Yeah. And this isn't to like tear down those jobs at all, and they're extremely important, obviously, but
of course, yeah,
but when you think about a lot of what we've seen with AI has been related to art and stuff, and I think that's because it's a very easy visual for people to understand how good this stuff is. You see an AI generated image that's almost as good as something that somebody took, and it's both scary, but also it's a visual representation of, wow, AI is real. It's here. It's growing quickly. It can do all these things in these amazing ways. But we're both in the arts. And so when you think about art, I think there's like a threshold where AI is just, it's not going to capture a certain element that humans want from human generated things. It's just not going to ever quite get there. Even if that means that it's a further separation from human generated stuff, needs to have more imperfections so that we appreciate it more. I think that kind of thing is coming in that realm. But then, when you talk about like it replacing jobs, like things at Salesforce, it's like, well, what does a human, what's the human element that is brought to these kind of jobs that are organizing stuff? And it's like, not much. The AI could probably do it more effectively and just kind of do it. And there's not going to be something we're looking for and willing to pay up for, like you're saying with a rocking chair.
Absolutely, right. And there's a famous like kind of saying in the art world is that people buy the artist, not the art. Like once an artist has like a story behind it or something like that, like even at smaller scales, this happens all the time. Like there are plenty of people who work creatively who sell music or stories or novels or anything, and what they focus a lot of their time on making TikTok and YouTube videos because they know if they make that personal connection, they're more likely to sell their art, right? There's no accountant out there making cool videos. And I know I'm knocking on accountants. I appreciate accountants.
Like
it's not a skill I have, right? But it's just it's a hard thing to transfer into having the human touch, giving it any real benefit, especially when you can essentially have like a room, not for a virtual room, an AI run like a company that's the equivalent of 200 people and have one supervisor guy that just checks everything, who is the human in the loop. And then it just works better for these companies. And that's what they're going to pick every time because, as always, their job is to grow or die, right? And one way to grow is, decrease your overhead. This does that right away.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting to consider because when you have an AI that is operating and doing different things, we're comparing it to that human element that we're talking about. And what is that? And when you're a remote worker, it's like it could basically kind of give the exact same inputs that a human could give probably. It could chat in Slack. There's even technology for it to show up to a Zoom call, which is, kind of ridiculous, but is where we're headed. And so that leads to maybe humans needing to come into work more. People, it sounds so ridiculous to use the word humans, but it's in relation to AI, so it makes sense. But Amazon this week is requiring workers to come back into the office, or I guess they announced it this week. It's starting somewhere like January 2nd. They're going to be requiring people who have been able to be remote to come back into work, I think 5 days a week. And this is kind of a big shift from what was required like 2 or 3 days in person. So a big shift there, but it could be because of this type of technology. What are your thoughts on remote work and companies like this making people come back in?
Dude, why are you setting me up as a sacrificial lamb here? I feel like no matter what I say, people are gonna be mad about
That's a
this
good
one.
point. I can go first if you want.
Yeah. No, it's all right. It's all right, man. I'll take the hit here. So this is where it gets really weird, right? In terms of thinking about AI and its integration into the workforce. This is what I will say, and I think people make the argument all the time is that like, kind of the reason that management wants people back into work so that they justify their job, because if there's no people to manage, why do you like why do you have a manager? Everyone's at home or whatever. And I'm sure that's true in a lot of cases. This is anecdotal and from my own experience. Okay. In office work is better than at home work in terms of what the product is that you make. And and my company makes YouTube videos and digital commercials and consulting. Like I'm not like, I'm not like trying to save the world or anything here, but there is a magic that happens when people are in the room together working on a problem and coming up with a solution. That is one of the things that right now AI can't replicate that good. If I was an at-home Amazon worker, especially if I was in a category that seems like it's something that could be redundant or replaced by AI, I would be like, yeah, send me into the office. That's how I'm going to keep my job. So I'll say that from the beginning. That being said, a 5-day work week is insane. It's been insane for a long time, especially with these AI tools. There's no reason that just having a 40-hour work week to have a 40-hour work week in office is nuts, I think. And I think that is a bad decision on Amazon's part. I think I think with, 2 to 3 days in the office, probably 3 maybe is the ideal one. Different for different cases. You get the best of both worlds. You can get that human interaction. You can get that conversation going. And still give people flexibility in their lives, which I think, what is the point of the system we've built between AI and technology and all this stuff if they're not letting us live better lives? Like in a lot of ways, it's made us live worse lives. I would say there's another kind of double-edged sword here to the work from home thing. And that is if you're always working from home and people think you're always available. Right? Whereas when you were like, if you were a classic 9 to 5 office worker, you clock out at 5, it's like, you can't bother me at home, man. I'm not working now, right? But when everyone is at home, there's this always availability kind of thing. There's actually several laws in place right now, like that are being proposed that like business owners, if you work from home, they can't contact you out of set business hours or something like that, right? So there's the work from home thing is interesting because I think it touches on a lot more things larger happening in our society than you think at first glance. Because I think it touches on the AI stuff, certainly. I think it touches on just how we're currently set up and how our economy operates and how it works and what really makes sense. And I guess I'm on record on both sides of it, so I'm straddling the fence a little here. And that even right now, we're shooting remotely today, and I feel like we've lost energy. Like I feel like it's better when I'm in the room with you, right? I think the conversation flows a little smoother. We can get to different points in different ways, and at home takes away that stuff. At the same time, though, I don't think people need to be spending their lives slaving away in an office all day.
Yeah, I very much appreciate remote work, but I know exactly what you're saying. Like that collaboration, and I've even seen it on what could arguably be like the biggest scale of that. I've recorded in a room together with all the musicians live, and then it makes a recording, and there's a magic there that is not achievable when you record separately. You can still record all your pieces separately, and I've done that, and I've been a part of great things, I think, that come together well with all the pieces being recorded separately. And I'm glad the music gets to be made that way, and it's saving cost or whatever, and all these things can still get made. But yeah, it's not the same as being all together in the same room.
Dude, especially in your example there of music, right? Like, and look, if you're a musician and you want to keep your job, I'd be like, man, I'll show up at the studio every day, right? Because the problem is, and you can maybe correct me if you have a different view on this, but this is my view on it, if someone tangentially in the music and sound kind of world, is that when people are recording separately, what you're actually getting is a lot more pristine kind of version of things, because especially if you're recording separately at different times, right? And you're just going to the track, like you basically, hey, I've got to hit these perfect marks to match what the track's doing. AI can do that exact thing already. Like you're not using any of your unfair advantages as a human in that situation, right? And when you're in a room with people, you can use your unfair human advantage, and that is you can play off what the other person's doing. You can have a little more energy of it, right? There's a classic thing in like older songs that were recorded like in full live studio sessions, how like the tempo slightly raises as it goes, as you're doing, because like and you're a drummer, you know this more than anyone, right? Because you're trying to keep everyone on time and everyone's creeping up, right? So, but that gives a magic to those songs that like, oh, like this song seems cooler like this somehow. And if you're a casual person, you don't really notice that. But if you're kind of dissecting it and figuring out why a song maybe seems more exciting, it is those kind of human elements. And that can only happen not in work from home, but in work from office or studio. But the thing is, that sounds really cool when we're talking about music. When we're talking about the customer service rep, I don't know, like if you can have that great of an argument that, oh, the customer service is so much better because it had the energy of the room, and it just doesn't sound as cool.
Yeah, so there's scenarios where work from home is probably totally fine, and things like these requirements are kind of unnecessary. And why are we having all of this great innovation and all of this AI technology if not to enable us to live better lives or freer lives, or to have more time and more flexibility to do what we need to do? But back to OpenAI and Chat-GPT. It's just fascinating to watch.
That's what we were talking about.
That was the topic. It's
cool.
fascinating to see all the AI development going on, and many argue that Apple is behind, but in some ways, I could see the argument that they are not behind when it comes to AI, because they have integrations like OpenAI, who's always bringing new things like Chat-GPT 01.